This Week in Startups is brought to you by NetSuite from Oracle, the last business system you'll ever need. To get your free guide, How to Overcome the 5 Obstacles to Successful Growth, go to netsuite.com/twist. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. If you've been paying attention, the blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and ICOs are on fire. We're sitting here in the summer, at the end of the summer of 2017, and after 3 or 4 years of talking about cryptocurrency on this program, it's kind of having its shining moment. Not only is Bitcoin trading at over $4,000 a coin, when we first started talking about it, this program was 40 cents. And like an idiot, I wrote about it and didn't buy it. And I'm sitting here wondering, God, am I still an idiot for not buying it at 4,000? Is it going to go to 400,000 a coin? And will it be a 100x return? Nobody knows. It could equally go down to zero. But our guest today, Peter Smith, is the CEO and co-founder of Blockchain. And he's raised, I think, close to $80 million, 70, 80 million bucks to run blockchain.com. That's a tough domain to get, huh? How long did that take? You had .info at the start, right?
Yeah, well, we actually had both, and made the mysterious decision to use blockchain.info for what was some great logic at the time. But it was really easy to get the domains, actually, because before we started using the term and before we called the company blockchain, there are only really 3 or 4 documented uses of the term blockchain, and always is 2 words. So we kind of invented the term and registered the domains and got to work.
So you were the first person to register blockchain, or you bought it from somebody?
No, we registered it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. No, it'd be kind of like, if you went out and started popularizing some random network consensus engineering technical term.
Yeah.
There just wouldn't have been a lot of demand for the domain name.
It makes sense. There was a time when there were literally words in the English dictionary that had not been registered as a domain name, and somebody literally took the dictionary and then just tried to. And in fact, I remember I bought one, Gadling, Gadling. A Gadling is a person who travels, like a vagabond kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's an old English term, and I was like looking through a thesaurus, and I find this term, and then I go to register to see how much it will cost to buy it, and it's available. I was like, how is that possible? Crazy. So what is blockchain.com? What is your business? I know you're in the crypto space. We've seen a lot of excitement. Are you a marketplace for people to buy and sell coins? Are you a wallet? Are you the software platform? Are you doing enterprise software? What are you doing at blockchain?
So we're a really large integrated platform. And so what we do is a few things. The first thing we do is build infrastructure that makes using different blockchains easy. And so whether you're a consumer or an enterprise, you can use our software, different pieces of our software to interact with those blockchains really easily.
The public blockchain.
Correct, the public blockchains. And we do some proprietary non-public work as well.
So who would need that software? Because right now, if I open a wallet anywhere, it posts to the blockchain, right?
Yep.
When I make a transaction, if you and I were to trade a Bitcoin, some miner would pick up our transaction, write it to the blockchain, and it would be on that public ledger. What is the infrastructure you provide beyond that?
For sure. So consumers use the wallet. Right, yeah. So you would use a wallet, and that wallet enables you to interact with the blockchain without running your own node, your own sort of cryptographic key service. And then enterprises use our software via an API to do really the same functions. So on an enterprise level, it'll be other exchanges, other companies providing wallets. And usually it's an entry point when people start experimenting. So some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies have used the API. Also 4 to 6 random developers in Argentina have used the API. It's a really diverse user set. The wallet is, it's kind of its own beast now. And it's built on top of the same platform that other enterprises build on top of our own API. And really what it does is it allows consumers to do really anything they want with digital currencies. So it supports Bitcoin and Ethereum, the 2 major, sort of cryptocurrencies in the market today. And it has a ability to buy and sell it in about 42 countries around the world today. So we're in more countries for buying and selling digital currency than any other company in the world.
So if I want
today.
to buy my first Bitcoin, I could go to blockchain.
Well, you're in America, so you can't.
Okay, so
we're
now
not,
explain that.
So
why can't
yeah.
you sell me a Bitcoin in America, but in other countries you could? Or other countries you do?
Well, regulatory work is difficult.
Okay.
And, we've spent years and quite a lot of time on this. But in the US, we haven't launched a product yet. And in large part because most of our user base isn't in the US. So we're a really international platform. We're headquartered in London. We have a big office in New York, but our heart and soul is global. And about 80% of our user base is overseas outside of the United States. And so we've chosen, strategically to focus on those markets overseas. That said, if we have this conversation in another month or two, I'd have a different answer for you.
Huh. Okay. And so Coinbase here would be the big competitor, I guess?
Coinbase is really big in California.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is because they're headquartered here and, backed by A16, which has its own sort of effect.
Andreessen Horowitz.
Yeah.
You say that with a little bit of a tone in your voice. What does that mean? The effect is what? That they're hype or that they're overvalued? What's that little tone I hear there?
I think
a little tone there, Peter.
I think that A16 startups are a class unto themselves, and that there is
even more shade. Go ahead,
that there's good things and bad things, right? There are a lot of times growth at any cost. Right. And I think Coinbase has been more conservative than a lot of other A16 startups. But they do drive really hard. We're a little more...
They drive hard or they just pay incredibly large prices to beat other venture capitalists, which then creates a perverse incentive then or dynamics.
I think you've said it very well.
Right. It's interesting that... this has become a narrative in Silicon Valley. Like a lot of people don't talk about this narrative, but there is a narrative now that if Andreessen Horowitz does your Series B, it's going to be overvalued at a high price, and then it's going to set the founder up to hit goals that are too aggressive. You're saying this now here on the program, knowing that it will really piss off Mark Andreessen.
I don't think Mark Andreessen is worried about what I say on a podcast.
But it is becoming a narrative. It's interesting that founders are now experiencing, because VCs were saying it 2 years ago, but now I'm hearing founders say it too, which is, hey, I don't want to wind up like Zenefits or Quirky or...
There's a long list.
I think overfunded companies by Andreessen Horowitz.
Not just overfunded, but overvalued. There's a difference. And I think the thing that's hard is, Andreessen will back you like that. They'll give you a high price, but they also expect you, they want you to go back out and remarket, 18 months later, right? That's how their model works. And, it really depends on what you're trying to do. I did not set out to build the fastest growing company in the history of tech startups. I really don't have any desire to do that.
Right.
What I'd like to do is build a long-term, enduring business that's around for, long after I'm here. Like, right. I want the business to be about more than me, about more than our venture capitalists. And if you want to do that, things take longer.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take shortcuts. And
you can take shortcuts. It just might flip the car over.
It's true. And we're seeing that. The biggest rationalization for growth at any cost, take the shortcuts, sort it out later, is a company called Uber.
Right.
Which I know you're an investor in, and congratulations for that. But, it's hard to imagine that like Uber is fulfilling its long-term, vision and potential right now.
Anybody who's involved with Uber from Travis on down would say, we might have gone a little too fast there for a while.
Look, I think like TK would tell you himself, right? Like they went too fast.
Yeah.
And so I think if you want to be around a long time, if you want to build an enduring business, a lot of it is getting to scale without committing mistakes that are going to bring you down later.
Got it.
And for us, that's meant taking a principled, sometimes slower approach to regulatory.
So what is that difference? And I get the sense that Coinbase is a little more freewheeling. So how have you approached regulatory issues versus them, let's say?
Look, I think that there's a tendency, and I don't think this applies to Coinbase necessarily, but I think there's a tendency of West Coast fintech startups to come into the regulator and say, we are technology, this is happening no matter what you say. Problem in fintech is like, this isn't the taxi industry.
Right.
There's very important, very large regulators, and the penalties are big. And so we go in and we say, hey, here's what we'd like to do. how can we work with you to deliver this value to consumers? Tell us where the lines are. And I'll tell you a story I've never told anyone on a podcast before.
Please.
I think it's been long enough that I can tell it.
Right.
When we were tiny, no one was even working on the project full time back then. I went to one of the very first meetups between regulators, law enforcement, and the digital currency industry. It was in DC. It was sponsored by Reuters. This is many years ago.
3, 4, 5 years ago?
This would be 5 years ago.
Wow.
And, you know, at the event, I met the head of FinCEN, which is the primary and most scary regulator in the US for digital currency businesses over the last couple of years. And I got her card and I sent her an email and said, can I just come in and meet with you and tell you what we're trying to do and get some views from you about whether or not we can do it in a way that you guys are comfortable? And she sent me an email back and said, sure, come on in at this time. And I went in and met with the head of FinCEN by myself, no attorneys. And we had a really good collaborative, discussion. And that was, nowadays that would be fairly crazy. That would sound crazy now.
Right.
But you can collaborate with these people. You just have to be open to working with them.
What's their main concern? The FinCENs of the world, and the United States seems to be incredibly conservative when it comes to currencies, cryptocurrencies, ICOs, and even the investment in private companies. What is America's concern, and are we over-regulating versus other parts of the world where people are freewheeling in their approach to cryptocurrencies? I want you to answer that question when we get back after this important message. Hey everybody, I want to welcome NetSuite as a new partner here at This Week in Startups. And if you're listening to this, you're probably a business owner and a leader, and you probably have said one of the following to yourself: why is it taking accounting so long to close the books? And we beat our revenue goal, but we lost money. Why? And the dreaded, we're getting audited. Yes, all of these things are a sign that you've outgrown your business management software. Or maybe you're not even using any software. QuickBooks and spreadsheets work fine at the start of a company. Of course, we all do that. But now there's too many mistakes and delays, and you can't get answers fast. So you need the #1 business management solution for growing companies. That is NetSuite from Oracle. NetSuite from Oracle is going to solve all these problems. You're going to know what's going on in your business in real time. Revenue, expenses, customers' orders, even your HR department, everything in a gorgeous dashboard on your phone even. And their current clients include people you know like GitHub, Localytics, PlanGrid, and 88% of Bessemer's next cloud unicorns are using NetSuite by Oracle. You're up and running fast, and it's the last business system you're ever going to need. So here's your call to action. Very simple. Go to netsuite.com/twist and you will get your free guide. That guide is called Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles for Growth. Okay, and let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. My guest is Peter Smith, the CEO and co-founder of Blockchain, blockchain.com. You go by blockchain, one word.
Yep.
The domain, blockchain.com, which is a tremendous domain name. Wow, well done. So, when we left you, we were speculating about regulation.
Yeah.
So
why is the U.S. slower?
Yeah, why is the U.S. slower? And is this going to make us second-class startups, second-class citizens, second-class innovators because of that slowness and because of the regulatory environment, which is the opposite of what happened with the internet, where we were ahead of everybody because we basically created it. So is this a place where we're going to just fall behind the Nordic states or China or India, Japan, other places that are really up on this technology?
Well, I think, the U.S. didn't really regulate the internet at all in the early days.
Right.
And it's very opposite in the fintech space, in which it's very regulated. The challenge with U.S. regulation in financial services is that as an artifact of sort of federal, state level regulation. So what people don't understand is that on a federal level, there are 7 or 8 major regulators. And we're creating new regulators. Like the newest new regulator is the Consumer Protection Financial, CFPB. I may have just messed that up, but it's definitely CFPB. Then on the state level, you have multiple regulators at the states. You then have legislation at the state level and at the federal level. And so, you have 20 to 30 layers of regulators and regulations in the United States for one market, right? And so that's, no matter how fast or how innovative they want to be, they're always going to be handicapped by the lowest common denominator. And so that's what's really tough about regulation in the US. And we're working, there's an industry is trying to help here. And actually the Trump administration, which I know is unpopular in San Francisco, has actually been a big proponent of the federal FinTech charter, which would straighten a lot of this out. But that's not passed.
What will that charter do?
It would consolidate regulation. Yeah, it's called federal preemption.
Got it.
And so the federal would take away the state level regulation.
So it kind of be like, I think the federal government sets a lot of standards for highways.
Correct.
And it used to be very local. And then they said, listen, let's just go with one set of federal speed limits and standardization.
Yeah, take us from 20, 30 regulators down to 8 or 9.
What country has the loosest regulations and is seeing the most creativity and innovation in the crypto space?
Don't want loose regulations. So what you want as a business, particularly a business of our size, is certainty. It doesn't really matter what the certainty is as long as you have certainty. And so, really, I think the governments that are doing really well on this front are Singapore, which is doing well.
Describe what they're doing.
So they're just very pragmatic and very responsive. There's nothing really interesting past that. Switzerland is doing well. A couple of the cantons, including Zug, is doing really well.
Who?
Zug.
What is Zug?
ZUG.
ZUG.
Yeah, it's a major financial services center. Switzerland. So Switzerland's doing really well. A lot of times people are calling it Crypto Valley.
So it's a town in Switzerland that is embracing crypto.
And Switzerland's organized into cantons, and these cantons are, pretty independent, almost like U.S. states. And so Switzerland as a whole is very crypto-friendly. Zug itself is very crypto-friendly and specific. And so they're seeing a lot of business go there. In fact, we've seen startups that were founded here in the Valley by Valley people relocate to Switzerland.
Really? What's an example of that?
Zappo.com, which is run by Wences.
Yeah, I know Wences.
He's a pretty major dude out here.
Yeah.
They're in Switzerland now.
So Zappo moved there. And I can see here Zug. It's called Zug. Is that how it's pronounced? Zug is... in July 16th, the city of Zug began to accept digital currency and payment of city fees. In order to advance Zug as a region that is innovating with future technology, the city council added Bitcoin as a means of paying small amounts up to 200 SFR. In order to reduce risk, Zug immediately converts any Bitcoin received as currency. Zug is a popular location for incorporation of companies such as Glencore and Nord Stream, which at times more companies registered than residents. Zug has also been referred to as the Crypto Valley by Ethereum founder. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's the equivalent of San Francisco taking Bitcoin for parking tickets.
Yeah.
Right. It's a pretty forward view. I think the other jurisdiction that's doing really well is actually the United Kingdom, where we're headquartered. This is partly because we've been there for a long time and we've been doing a lot of work with them for many years. Partly because the UK is just set up to be a little faster on this because they have fewer regulators. And look, Mark Carney, who's the governor of Bank of England, they're very forward thinking on this stuff. He and I have done, panels together, like at the World Economic Forum, where he and I are going back and forth on how a government will issue a sovereign digital currency.
How far are we from that? This is
not
something
far.
We're not far
Not
from
far.
a government releasing their own cryptocurrency.
24 months.
Within 24 months?
From a major government. Not from a little one, but a major one.
So a top 50 government in the world or something. So
Top 30.
Singapore could
I would
have,
say even top 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll
would
be
take
Singapore or the
out.
UK?
I don't think the UK will be first, but it'll be the first G7.
Really?
Would be my guess, yeah.
Wow.
And before the Brexit, I think they would have been even faster.
So a country will issue, the United States dollar will move to a cryptocurrency.
The US will be one of the slowest.
Right.
And look, here's the reason they'll
Why?
do it. Well, why is the US going to be slow?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Well, they're not getting a lot of things done in DC right now.
Okay, so it just has to do with the climate. They're
And
not specifically
secondly,
slow on
the
this.
U.S. has the least to worry about. So the reason a country would issue a digital currency is because it's a competitiveness issue. When you actually ask a central banker, why are you interested in this? The answer comes back competitiveness, because central bankers know what a lot of us don't know, which is that their product is a product. The dollar is a product. The pound's a product. And if there's something out there that is faster, more efficient, provides better data,
more stable theoretically because of the public blockchain.
sure, even
More
but
trust even.
more trust, lower
No-
infrastructure costs.
No transaction
Yeah.
cost.
If that's true,
Huh.
then they have a problem on their hands.
They have who has a problem?
Central bank from a competitive standpoint.
The one who doesn't deploy it.
Correct.
Got it. So this would become an arms race where if some company, I'll just pick Ireland, decides to do this or something, a country picks to do this, people routing money in the world would say, you know what? We can see every single transaction on the ledger in Ireland. We know that there's not a money laundering or as much money laundering issues, as much counterfeiting. Like, we don't know how many counterfeit $100 bills there are out there, but there's a lot, from my understanding.
Well, if you can move, 100 million in Irish money, for $2, and you can do it in 20 minutes, you'll settle in Irish dollars instead of pounds.
Wow.
And so the other reason that it's really interesting is it speeds up the velocity of money, which is really important to central bankers. My background's in economics, and so this stuff is like catnip
monetary
to me.
velocity? I've heard this term many times, but describe what monetary velocity is and why it's important. Because in one way, monetary velocity having a transaction fee associated with it means there's revenue being generated by the moving of money. But if you're advocating for
it's almost like oil in the engine of the economy.
Okay, explain.
Right, it's like oil in the engine of the economy. And so the faster money is moving around, the more it's being utilized, the more capital is being utilized, the more economic growth you're going to see. So the Bank of England's done some really interesting studies on this where, if they estimate that if they moved 30% of their transaction volume in the UK to a digital currency, they would see 3 or 4 points in economic growth. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 or 4 points in economic growth is enough to eliminate unemployment in the UK.
Well, that might be a whole year's growth in a country.
No, that's 8 years growth in the UK.
In the UK, yeah. But in the United States, where we grow 2% a year and a half, 1.5 or something.
We haven't hit 2% actualized in a while.
Yeah. So it would be 2 years of growth or 3 years of growth.
3 or 4 at the current rate, yeah.
Which is pretty significant. I mean, we'll get a politician with a 4-year term a nice bump.
And I mean, that's for 30% of the volume moving to a digital currency, not 100%, right?
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this offshoot that's occurred, Ethereum. We all know about Bitcoin, but for people in the audience who have a light understanding of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, explain the difference and why Ethereum now has it caught up to Bitcoin in terms of market cap, or it's getting close?
No, it's quite a ways back.
Quite a ways back.
Yeah, it got close for a few days. Got close for a few days, and then
Bitcoin went back up, or Ethereum went down.
Ether went down a little, and Bitcoin went up a lot. Yeah.
But transaction volume, is that what
is growing steadily on Ethereum? So Ethereum's getting to the point now where it's actually being used.
I read that it caught up in something, but I thought maybe it was transaction volume it caught up in then. But the market caps are significantly different.
Yeah, they're significantly different.
What percentage of Bitcoins are lost and gone forever?
5 to 10%.
Really? That seems low to me. Yeah. What percentage of Bitcoins does Satoshi own? The person or the person or persons who created it. How much do they have in their wallets? What percentage of the Bitcoin?
I think it's like $1 billion worth or something like that.
So there's $1 billion in whoever created this sitting there.
Yep.
And not one has ever been sold.
Correct.
So either it's lost, or that person is playing an incredibly long game.
Or let's have a new theory. Or if the person has an economist or had a solid basis in economics, they know that any good monetary system needs a monetary base. Basically a base that's never moving. And they mine that to create the base. And then what's interesting is they very publicly mined it. You can very trivially find all the addresses. But then there's other miners, very early miners, like first 12 miners of Bitcoin, where the funds are very hard to trace. And so if I was doing it, I would have done the monetary base, but then I would have mined a side stash of Bitcoin that is harder to trace, and I would have sold out of that side stash.
One theory I have is that Bitcoin is phenomenally manipulated as a currency. In other words, you have all these dark pools of people who have large amounts of Bitcoin. Nobody knows who they are. They got in very early. There is nothing that would stop that person from creating thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of wallets, randomly trading with each other, and having the ability to move the price up over time through their massive base of wallets and transactions. And we know that if there is an opportunity to game a system, it will be gamed. So what percentage of Bitcoin's price, or what percentage of Bitcoin's volume transaction do you believe is Fugazi manipulating the currency, and how manipulated do you think it is as a currency?
So I'll answer a question on a couple levels.
Yeah, please.
The first is that I think historically the price was manipulated. So when the price went up to 1,200 the first time, that was clearly manipulation. You know, we were warning people that it was manipulation at the time. Still stand by that view.
How would they go about manipulating?
So it's actually, you don't need to like create all these wallets and moving all this stuff around. You just do it on the exchanges. And in the exchange itself, Mt. Gox was manipulating the price. Now, I would find it very unlikely. And the difference is that most of the trading now occurs on regulated venues. So people where they're doing BSA audits. So the regulator
BSA audit, that's like
Bank Secrecy Act.
Got it.
So, and then in the UK, FCA, and so these like regulators are coming in and looking at their order books, right? And so it's really dangerous to manipulate the price when the regulator's coming in and looking at your order flow.
So if they saw transactions where somebody was self-dealing, they would pick up on it eventually.
Not big fans of that.
Not big fans of the self-dealing.
Nah. Yeah. So the last sort of corner of the world where there still was a possibility for this was China.
Right.
And the PBOC came in about 6 months ago now and really cleaned those guys up.
Really?
I mean, shut them down, locked their order books.
The People's Republic of China shut down the marketplaces.
For a few weeks, yeah, and then they came back. But under much tighter regulation.
Got it.
So now they're being inspected and audited. So now with that, I think about, in the last sort of exchange that people weren't sure where it was, or, let's call it gray exchange was shut down a couple months ago. With that, I think, 80% plus of the trading is happening on regulated institutions. And that would just make it very hard to manipulate the price today.
All right, so here's
the other thing.
Go ahead, yeah.
Because this is a complicated answer, so we'll get to the bottom of it.
Let's keep
the other thing is that
it.
The most dangerous thing to do with your Bitcoins is to have them online and moving. And early Bitcoin holders know this. So if you were a smart guy and you had a lot of Bitcoins from the early days, one of the most dangerous things to do today with your big stash of Bitcoins would be to do exactly what you described, having a bunch of them online and trading with each other and creating
Because they could get hacked.
They get hacked. You can make mistakes. Historically, you want to keep your Bitcoins sitting. I'd try not to move mine very often.
So you put them on a thumb drive, you print out paper, what?
I put them in our wallets. I use our wallet software to hold all my Bitcoins.
And then you put that computer offline?
Nope. Our wallets are all software solutions, cloud-based.
I noticed when I opened my wallet today on your platform, it said block the Tor traffic. Why would you block Tor traffic to coming in and out of Bitcoin wallets?
Network anonymizers some people use them for privacy. And so we want to support people having privacy options. So we run a Tor node just like Facebook does, and Instagram runs a Tor node, and most major tech companies now run a Tor node. Same time, a lot of attacks come from Tor nodes. And so, for example, I block Tor nodes into my wallets.
Yeah, I blocked.
But that's a personal choice you make that we want to let you make. We recommend that you block it, as you found out in the security macro.
Some people also, in related news, don't walk through dark back alleys with a wallet full of cash.
But
related news.
But you should make your own choice about that.
Exactly. If you want to walk down a dark alleyway in the worst part of town with your entire net worth in your backpack,
go for it.
Go for it. Probably not wise.
Not the best idea.
All right.
Now, the last thing on this manipulation.
Yeah.
And then I'll let you ask your next question. Is, we run by far the most popular platform for digital currency in the market. We have millions and millions of users. And I can, be very confident that kind of thing isn't happening on our platform.
Because you know who your customers are?
We see the data, right? So at any given time, I know where people are logged in from, what part of the world, and it's very organic. And, we're 40% of the network, when I logged in this morning. And so, we're a pretty major chunk of that.
You're 40% of the overall Bitcoin holdings are in yours, or transaction volume?
Transaction volume. We've never disclosed how much of the holdings we are.
Got it. All right. When we get back from this final break, I want to see your product in action and do a quick demo for us. But the audience, this is This Week in Startups, really wants to know what you think of ICOs, the regulation of ICOs, and if every company, because I'm hearing this now, every company needs to be ICO'd. This to me seems farcical and insane, but I guess this is the world we live in. So when we get back on This Week in Startups, we'll ask Peter Smith of blockchain what he thinks of ICOs. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about the awesome Squarespace. I use Squarespace all the time. I think I've created a half dozen websites this year alone. Launch Angel Summit, founder.university, angel.university. Every one of our websites we put onto Squarespace here at launch, and we love it. It costs us $10, $20 a month to have an amazing, gorgeous website, and they will even give you a free domain name if you start up for a year. So start your free trial today. No credit card is required. You get a free domain name if you sign up for a year. And if you decide to sign up for Squarespace after the trial, use the promo code TWIST and you will get 10% off your first purchase. You will have a professionally designed website. You can pick from all these amazing, beautiful templates, and it works everywhere, on mobile, on your desktop, on a wide monitor, on a small monitor, on an iPad, on an iPhone, Android. It doesn't matter what you're using. It will look beautiful. State-of-the-art tech, secure and stable. It can withstand massive amounts of traffic when you go viral, and it's trusted by millions, including some of the most respected brands in the world. I am a huge fan of Squarespace. Thank you to Squarespace, and make sure you use that promo code TWIST. So we do it with our in-house creative and our content staff, not by hiring expensive developers. Thanks to my friends at Squarespace. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and you can follow the show on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, TWI Startups, and you can follow me, Jason, on the Twitter and the Instagram. Today, my guest is Peter Smith. He is the CEO and co-founder of Blockchain. You can go check them out at Blockchain on the Twitter and blockchain.com. Go ahead and open a wallet. It's free to do so, and you can buy and sell coins in 34 countries except for the United States for now. But in 6 months, maybe that would change.
2 months.
In 2 months, maybe that will change. Founded in 2011, 60 employees or so.
Yeah.
And $70-80 million raised. They just did a $40 million Series B with some people you might know, including Google Ventures, or GV as they call it. And previously, Lightspeed Venture Partners. I think they did the Series A.
Yep.
Correct? And Richard Branson and Virgin Group, which means you've gone to this Bitcoin Necker Island retreat how many times in the last 5 years?
Zero.
Now, wait a second. You run one of the largest Bitcoin exchanges, if not the, is it the largest or?
We're the largest consumer platform, yeah.
Consumer platform. Okay. So, but you didn't go to Necker Island to talk about Bitcoin, and you hate tech conferences. Here's a little aside we'll get into. Why the disdain for tech conferences? I run 2 of them.
So.
And I share your disdain, by the way, but go ahead.
So I think a couple things. So on the Necker Island front, I'm sure Necker Island's beautiful, but it's a very expensive trip.
It is.
And it's a very long trip. By the time you get there, get the island, spend a week and get back, talking about 10, 12 days. And if I'm going to take a 10, 12-day vacation, which I haven't yet, it's probably not going to be with other digital currency people.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to pay $5,000 or $6,000 personally to do it.
Right. Plus 20 grand for your room.
Yeah, correct. So
it's more like 30 grand.
So I haven't been. Virgin folks do have other events on Necker Island, which I also haven't been to. Mostly, I like to be in the office.
Right.
And working with the team. This is
admirable. You've raised all this money. You've got things you've got to accomplish. How do you guys make money? What's the long-term revenue model for blockchain?
Yeah.
Software? You charge for SaaS or something?
We charge. We're like a little toll booth operator.
Got it. Yeah. Explain.
So you want to drive down our highway, use our infrastructure, use our product. We take a tiny little fee.
What is that fee? Just a transaction fee, like 1% of transactions going through the system, or
we charge on transaction fees on transactions. We also charge for some of our data feeds.
Got it. What does a transaction fee cost? What's the range of Bitcoin or Ethereum transaction fees? Because people talk about the benefit being it's free compared to credit cards being 3%, 2 or 3%. What are your transaction costs?
At the moment, they're about 7 or 8 basis points.
7 or 8 basis points.
Which is, Visa is about 350 basis points.
Right. So you're saying you are not even a tenth of 1%.
Correct.
Right. So that's a problem for them.
It's a small problem for them.
And does that give you enough room to deal with fraud? Is fraud an issue? How often do you have to roll back transactions? What level of assault are you under from the Russian and Chinese hackers and other hacker groups?
Constant.
But
we've done well on that front. And a lot of it, people often they ask me this and they want to hear like some amazing crypto thing that we've done. And the reality is we've mostly done things like that Facebook has figured out how to do on the fraud front. Login is really where you got to protect. And so, it's a lot of standard stuff around device imprinting and this kind of thing. But yeah, security is a big threat. I mean, and you really want to do your best effort here. It's where we spend a lot of time and effort. And the crypto space in general is not great on this front. I mean, I think
which is bizarre. Why would, if the crypto space knows there's so much at stake, they're so lazy when it comes to
Well, it's not laziness, to be fair.
Incompetence?
It's it's the fact that there is no bigger target, right? So
if you're PayPal and you're transferring money digitally, you're just the biggest target. There's the most there to reward the hacker when they do win the video game.
Correct. So look, DDoS attacks are a good example. If you look at the record DDoS attacks against internet companies, cryptocurrency companies are right there at the top.
Right.
We got hit by a DDoS attack recently. Took us down for 93 seconds, and we felt bad about it. And then it took PayPal down for 18 hours.
Yeah.
They just redirected at PayPal, and it wiped them out for 18 hours.
What's the point of a DDoS attack on a cryptocurrency site? Because all you're doing is preventing them from transacting.
Correct, but that has an effect on the market.
So it drops the price of the coin.
Can drop the price.
So then you could buy on the dip?
Correct.
Ah.
Or you go short before you launch the DDoS attack.
Go
or
short.
Some companies will pay ransoms because their anti-DDoS systems aren't strong enough.
It's interesting. I was on the board of Disdain, the DNS company.
Yeah.
And they experienced the 100x DDoS attack, and they survived it. But boy, was that difficult. When you have that
100x would be, I don't know if we'd even notice.
Yeah, this was 100x, the largest one before that. And they were able to get through it, but it was a level of insanity that nobody had ever seen before.
Yeah, it's tough, and the other thing in our space is that, a lot of the platforms, particularly in this, big surge that's happened this summer, have gone down. Most of the major companies have gone down. All the Californian ones have gone down. One of the things I'm really proud of is that, that we haven't.
Yeah.
And staying up is really, really important for us. It's like the little things that are kind of hard.
Well, I mean, if you have dynamic routing of your DNS, you have a backup cloud, you're going to be able to mitigate against this. And it's a cat and mouse game, but you'll definitely be able to stay ahead of it if you have already planned to have your data in multiple locations and be able to fire up a backup. Right?
Yeah. Some of the very sophisticated DDoS attacks, that would not be enough.
Would be enough, yeah.
But yeah, you can stay up. Like we do stay up. But it's something you got to invest into.
All right, let's take a look. We'll get to the ICOs next, but let's take a look at your product for a second here. And everybody who wants to try it, it's free to create a wallet, right? So we can just go on blockchain.com right now and create a wallet. So here's your recent activity. Give me a Command plus so you make the screen a little bigger if that's possible. There you go, boom. Maybe one more even. Now the kids can see it at home. And if you're watching, we're looking at Be Your Own Bank here and recent activity. And you got a balance of $46, 0.0076 Bitcoins, and some Ethereums.
So we've got some Ethereum and some Bitcoin in here. Yeah. So if you want to go deal with your Bitcoin stuff, you just go here. If you're going to send, it's pretty quick.
Yep.
One more click and we're on the send. We use dynamic routing and dynamic fees on all the send activity in the wallets. It's where our transactions clear faster, but for less money than anybody else. So they're a little more efficient on that front. Over here, you've got your Ethereum. You can toggle in between the digital currency and the dollar equivalent really easily.
Just quick to toggle between them and see what you got.
There's a security center here, and this is something that we've put a lot of effort into, just really figuring out how to make it as fast as possible to secure your wallet and as easy as possible to do that while sort of making sure that you get the security level you need on your wallet. And this is really hard. Like consumer UX security is really tricky. This feature has really improved all of our metrics on this front pretty dramatically. But, it was 4 or 5 months to get it right. And what's funny is, TechCrunch never is going to write an article that's like, blockchain spends a ton of time, really gets the security macro right. Yeah. And you're like, But at the same time, they will write an article that's like, you launched in another country. Yeah.
And there's no Michelin star version of journalism right now for startups where it's like, by the way, we're just going to give credit for some basic blocking and tackling here. The silverware was great, the service was great, the climate was great. All that's kind of table stakes. The journalists out there, the fake news would rather focus on.
And this comes back to something we were talking about earlier, which is the sort of growth at any cost mentality, which is getting this right and getting your infrastructure right so that when you're growing fast or getting attacked, you don't go down. That's work that is not headline work, right?
Yeah, in a way, you get no PR credit for it.
But it's really important.
It's the most
Now, it goes the wrong way.
You get a lot
when
of credit.
people,
Ashley Madison, right?
Yeah, people write articles about how people are getting their Bitcoin stolen.
Right.
Right. They, write articles about how you're going down, how you're fast growing but troubled. I feel like the fast growing but troubled article is it's a thing now. It's
I would say that's like that's a punch ticket. Like, yeah, wow, we get stamped on that, right? You're growing too fast.
What's really interesting is, one of our, we've had competitors who've had the fast growing but troubled article written, and not them, but like somebody else, totally different industry, who had the fast growing but troubled article written about them was like, yeah, he's like, I feel it's like a badge of honor. It means we grew fast enough. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, I
so.
think if you look at Zenefits would be the example of where it became. I have a theory on it, which is if you're going fast and it's in benefit of consumers and it's a noble fight, then the world will back you. So if Elon Musk wants to create showrooms for Tesla and he wants to sell directly to customers and not create a dealer channel, well, we all hate going to dealerships.
Yeah.
It's like the worst experience of buying a new car. Buying a new car should be a joyful experience. Like, oh my God, I bought a new car. Like this is like
and it never is.
And it's always painful and arduous. So Elon says, you know what, we're just going to get rid of the dealers. We'll sell direct. There's no negotiation on price. You pay online, you got what you want, and you can go see the car in a showroom. They tried to stop him in Jersey, Texas, other places, force you to have a dealer. So if he fights that fight, that feels good to people. But if you fight the fight of, I want to get my insurance sellers through their insurance certification program by cheating and by creating a macro, which is what Zenefits did, speaking of Andreessen Horowitz company, that felt like cheating to people because it was in the benefit of Parker, the founder of Zenefits, not the people he was servicing, not as customers.
Is what you're doing for the ultimate benefit of your customer, your user, or is it just for the benefit of your top line growth? Right.
Of the value of your own stock option.
And that's the difference. But coming back to this, so this security feature, really awesome. I'm super proud of it.
I just went through it and it was like very delightful to put on my two-factor.
Yeah,
now wait a second. With the two-factor, let me ask you a really nuanced question here. I thought that doing two-factor with the mobile phone SMS was the best. But I've recently been told by people that this last hack of Bitcoins and wallets being stolen was people taking over people's SIM cards in their phones, getting their two-factor, and specifically going after two-factor people.
What this is actually people. So what happens is people tell Jack the phone number, so they go into the Verizon store and say, "I want you to like forward this number to my new phone number."
Right.
And Verizon's like really bad about this. If you're on Verizon, you should get off Verizon for lots of reasons. But there are ways to prevent this. And so when this became a big scandal, one of our competitors, and it's like, we'll blame Verizon.
Which one was it? Coinbase?
One of our competitors. And it's like, well, we'll blame Verizon.
Now I got to go do a search.
And the thing is like, look, like you need to have redundant systems. And so you don't see a similar story about us, thank God. And we're not perfect, right? But you have to protect against that eventuality. Now, to answer your question, the Authenticator app is better in most cases than the cell phone number, I believe. But I think it's usually
what's
for privacy
better than the cell phone
reasons.
number?
Google Authenticator.
The Google Authenticator is.
The downside of Google Authenticator is if you lose your phone, it's going to take you 2 or 3 days to restore access to all your accounts. But really, you want to make sure that you're using a cell phone, not with Verizon. Would really be a positive start.
Yeah, and so this person tried to get Verizon support. There's a big Medium post. It was Cody Brown, I think, wrote a big post about this. I'm pulling it up right now on my desktop here, and you can see it. He basically got this notice from Verizon that somebody had changed their phone number, and then all of a sudden, Coinbase password resets, Coinbase, new device detected, boom, all his Bitcoin and Ethereum, 70...
Look, and there should be things that
$8,000 gone in 15 minutes.
And there should be things that fall back there on that front. But I want to come back to the Security Center, which I appreciate you were delighted by. We just launched a new feature last week, and I'll show that one as well now. So this is Exchange. So say I have Bitcoin, I have $32 of Bitcoin and 14 of Ether, and I would like some more Ether. So I can just come in here and
What's the difference when people say Ether and Ethereum?
Ethereum is the platform in the ecosystem. Ether is the currency. They learned from Bitcoin because it's always been confusing. Like Bitcoin with a big B is the protocol and ecosystem. Bitcoin with a little b is the currency. It's like, that's not really great. And so Ethereum actually...
It'd be like calling the treasury the dollar.
Yeah. So Ethereum fixed a lot of early Bitcoin mistakes, one of which was not having two words.
So Ethereum is the platform.
Correct. Ether is the little tokens.
Is the tokens.
Correct. So let's go in here and get ourselves some more Ethereum.
So we're exchanging Bitcoin for Ethereum.
Yep.
Which has been a hard thing to do.
Yeah. It's not been great for people. But now you can
Why
do it
has
in
it
about...
not been great for people? Why has this been so difficult as a task?
It's just, needed to build some features that made it easier.
So here it goes. It exchanges it. And then, so you keep a certain amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum in your store, or are you doing this with...
So we do a lot of volume.
Got it.
So, we'll do, I think this year we're going to be at around, in just our consumer wallet, around 30-40% of the volume PayPal will do this year. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So we can't just keep a little bit of Ethereum and Bitcoin sitting around. We work with market makers, trading groups to work with our order flow, because our order flow is pretty massive.
And there's the shapeshift withdrawal fee is 0.005.
This is just, you have to do, when you send the Ethereum into the wallet, there's going to be a fee for the network, and that's just a network fee.
But you collect
for the
that.
miner.
Oh, for the miner.
Yeah, that's for the
Got
miner.
It.
Yeah.
They get their little slice.
So you'll see the transaction here, and in about 10 minutes it'll complete out. But it took me 20 seconds to set up the trade, which is great. We're really, really excited about that, and that feature is doing really well right now.
Is that because people want to get out of Bitcoin and get into Ethereum? Is that a big trend right now?
Oh, no, it's been going both ways.
Really?
So you can go from Bitcoin and Ether into Bitcoin or Bitcoin into Ether, and it goes both ways.
All right.
Yeah.
Two important topics we have to get to. ICOs and your thoughts on that, as well as what is going to be the killer app beyond a money store and speculation for cryptocurrencies, because it seems to me that we have yet to see a use case for the coins, a major use case beyond money store and speculation. There seems to be a small amount of international shipping of money back and forth. I'm an investor in a company called Abra that specializes in that, of like moving money from the United States to Mexico for people who are trying to send money back to their families, kind of a thing. Why has there not been, we'll start with the second question, I guess, but why has there not been another compelling use case? Or are we just not aware of it? Is there some compelling use case beyond speculation and a money store because I don't trust my native currency?
It's a good question. Let's go reverse order. We'll do ICOs last.
Okay.
When you say we, I think it's really important to define the we, like we haven't seen. And, here in California, you're maybe never going to see past that. I think, though, that when we look at our user base, so for example, if you look at Coinbase's user base, very US heavy, very California heavy.
So it's all speculation.
It's all speculation. Yeah. Our user base, 71% of our active users have done at least one peer-to-peer transaction in the last 30 days.
So,
right?
that Venmo case is starting to emerge.
That's international money transfer. That's not speculating. That's not trading. That's people making people-to-people transactions, 70 plus% of them. Wow. So it is happening. It's just not going to happen here in California because you have Venmo. And like the U.S. is one of the world's most isolated markets, actually, and it's because the U.S. market is enormous. And so the internal flow in the U.S. market, it's crazy. I had to pay someone back today. I had to send them $400. I'm the CEO of the largest digital currency platform in the world, and I used Venmo because they're American, and like they,
I need to get a Venmo account.
Right?
I have one, but I don't go on there.
Yeah, so
it's kind of creepy. Venmo shows you what transactions you're doing to your friends.
I know. Well, you can have like private only transactions, which I have set up, but and Venmo is another interesting one. I think at some point they're settling with FinTech on this now, but at some point like 40% of Venmo transactions were for drugs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and people were putting in the notes. People were putting in the notes like,
this is my
for
drugs.
the weed or the weed emoji, and it's just like, oh Lord.
Wow.
But
420.
Yeah.
They're just putting in.
But what's interesting on the like sort of journalism and memes front is like in our space, people are like, oh, digital currency and Ooh.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've never gone over, I don't think the digital currency ecosystem's ever gone over like 5 or 6%, even at the height of the dark markets, which are mostly shut down now. But Venmo was like, you know, the number one way to buy weed for college-age kids for a long time. And you don't see anybody writing about that.
So, wait. In order for that to be true, then college drug dealers, like weed dealers, would need to be embracing Venmo as well.
Yeah, which they
These
weren't.
are the stupidest drug dealers I've ever heard of. Why would they ever create a digital footprint of their transactions?
Jason, if you were a drug dealer who's in college,
right?
Say you're an NYU drug dealer.
Yeah.
You're dealing to your fellow students.
I think there's an HBO show about this. Yeah.
You probably haven't sat down and figured out the maximum way to spend your time, right? Like you're probably not
that smart.
Probably not that smart.
It's just unbelievable. It's
and if you're using Venmo to conduct your business, you're really probably not that smart.
That is insanity. So let's talk a little bit about that, the dark web and anonymity.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to ICOs. I'll keep teasing the ICOs. What is the story with the dark web right now? What is the state of the dark web? Because I know a lot of things have been shut down, but it seems like people are still buying incredibly dangerous drugs. I read about, is it fentanyl, the name of the super heroin that kills people after one use is fentanyl. Anyway, these kids in Salt Lake City with Bitcoin are buying fentanyl over the Tor network. 2 kids take it and they just die. I read this story. Somebody will pull it up and share it with me on the chat room. But is the dark web still operating? And then how much anonymity do people actually have with Bitcoin and these wallets? In other words,
not much. So the problem with digital currencies,
but there is a perception that they're anonymous.
In the early days, and this is a lot of things to journalists, you know, people were like, "Oh, Bitcoin is this anonymous digital currency." And at the time, and this is on, you know, posted on old messaging boards, I was saying, look, like we're writing all the data to a publicly available database. Like, you know, the track record of data analytics figuring out what's going on a database is really good. And in our space, we put everything on a public one. And so what happened is people developed tools over a couple of years, and, you know, those tools have gotten very sophisticated. And most of the dark markets have been shut down. And when new ones pop up, they're shut down very quickly. You know, I talked to, you know, if you listen to like talks given by, you know, the lead prosecutor from the Silk Road case, you know, he jokes that by the end of it, he wished everyone was committing their crimes in Bitcoin because it took him 5 years to do the last case he did, and it took him 11 months to do the Silk Road one. And so I think the tools have gotten really advanced. You know, the sort of single biggest data point that I can give you is every year in the UK, HMT, which is the UK regulator that looks after money laundering, releases a risk report. Like, what are they worried about every year? And this year, digital currencies came in last place.
They're not worried about them.
We got beaten by the gift card people. And so, you know, I think that at this moment in time, it's pretty under control. Now, what is true is that a lot of the dark markets are using newer digital currencies that have privacy features that Bitcoin and Ethereum don't have. And so a lot of the a lot of the dark markets are now using something called Monero.
What is that? Monero, it's first American.
Yeah, it's a digital currency. It's a pretty niche use case of basically dark markets.
So it's 100% anonymous, this one.
Well,
it's designed from the bottom up to be more anonymous.
Today it is.
Got it.
But the thing about technology and writing things to a public blockchain is that technology advances over time. And I'm not sure it's as anonymous as people think it is. The other thing is that, you know, at this point, there aren't really a lot of those gray exchanges left. And so you're always going to have sort of the on and off ramps into the digital currency ecosystem, and people are regulated at those on and off points.
Interestingly, here's the story. I pulled it up on my screen in the control room. If you see me making my screen bigger and smaller, that means I want you to pull it up. But you can see these 2 beautiful kids here, Grant Seaver left and Ryan Ainsworth. These kids bought a drug called Pinky, and they're gone. That's pretty crazy. Just a few flakes of fentanyl can be fatal. It's the New York Times story. Their deadly efficiency also makes them ideal for sale online. Unlike heroin and prescription painkillers, which are relatively bulky, enough fentanyl to get nearly 50,000 people high can fit in a standard first-class envelope. I mean, it's incredible how easy it is for these kids to get access to it. Among the dead, two 13-year-olds, Grant Seaver and Ryan Ainsworth, who died last fall in the wealthy resort town of Park City, Utah, after taking a synthetic opioid known as U47700 or Pinky. The boys had received the powder from another local teenager, and here's the punchline, who bought the drugs on the dark web using Bitcoin, according to Park City Police Chief. So this stuff still exists, and it's some dystopian science fiction. Like, literally people are making these deadly chemicals in China and selling them to 13-year-olds. What is the culpability of platforms like yours with these kind of transactions occurring? Do you have some responsibility for this? And how do you think about it? How do you actively make sure you're not being used in these marketplaces? Can you? Is it unrealistic for us to expect you as Visa or MasterCard to have this level of granular ability? But it would seem to me that just finding people in China trading with people in the U.S., that's some sort of red flag already.
Well, there's a lot of legitimate trade between China and the U.S. The two countries are the two largest trading partners in the world. So maybe not as obvious as you think, but...
Well, but I mean, okay, let me say...
But let me...
A peer-to-peer $100 transaction or $500 transaction between two parties, one in China, one in Salt Lake City, this seems to be a weird transaction to exist in the world.
So I think what's tough about these cases is like, there's like a huge emotional pull to them.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah, kids dying.
And they're really sad. And I will say that I grew up not in Silicon Valley, not going to Stanford. I grew up in one of the, capitals of methamphetamine production and distribution in the United States.
Which is?
I grew up in Georgia and then Virginia.
Wow.
And, I've seen what drugs do, what synthetic drugs do, and probably have experienced, the effect they have on communities in a way that most startup founders we'll never see.
Right.
And so it's something I care deeply about. And if I felt like what we were doing was, mostly going to enabling that, like there's no way I would spend my life doing this.
Right. So how do you think about stopping it? Because it's super clear.
I think the way you stop it is like the way you stop almost all crime. Is that you have to make sure that law enforcement has the tools to trace down people. You're not going to deal with the drug problem by finding their friend in Park City who brought drugs online and blocking that.
Right.
People always find a way around those solutions.
Right.
But you have to go after the suppliers and after the markets.
Yeah.
And the law enforcement around the world has gotten really good at this. And
so I would think you get some number of subpoenas on some regular basis.
We have people
that we're not privy to.
We have people whose full-time job is responding to subpoenas and working with law enforcement.
Wow.
Now, at the same time, I take...
Doesn't Google publish the subpoenas they get? Do you publish the subpoenas you get, or do you publish the number you get?
We haven't historically. We will this year.
Oh, wow.
I think...
What's the range? Is it thousands of subpoenas coming in?
It's not thousands.
So it's hundreds.
It's hundreds. And, I think the thing that's really key about what we do, contrary to all of our major competitors, is all of our data is published to the public blockchain. And so, we don't hide behind any doors or any secrecy. Almost all the data we have is published to the public blockchain. And then law enforcement uses their analytics to figure out what's going on.
So law enforcement is on the blockchain looking for transactions, but they don't know the geography. You do.
You can usually tell the geography from the blockchain as well.
You can.
Yeah.
Easily spoofed or not?
Not easily.
Not easily spoofed.
And it's really not the geography you need. You really, the internet is a global thing.
Right.
And you're really tracking flow is what they mostly do. So
what does it mean, flow, in this context?
The flow of transactions.
Got it.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, look, like if we had a serious problem on our hands, digital currencies would not be in last place in people's risk analysis.
Well, here's the thing.
And so, the other thing, and this comes back to it, is that technology fundamentally is going to enable great things and enable things that are suboptimal. The best point is like Skype. Like, we all love Skype, and by extension, FaceTime audio, iMessage, WhatsApp. Skype was maybe the greatest boon to human trafficking in the history of the world.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, two things. First of all, it made it a lot easier for them to coordinate, and this is the same of any international crime. Secondly, is that suddenly you had webcams. And that increased the demand for trafficked people by a huge factor. Suddenly, you didn't need to traffic someone from Eastern Europe to America. You just needed to traffic them from the countryside to the capital city.
Got it.
Right? So, but at the same time, like if you look at the net impact that voice over IP technology has had,
sure,
it was probably a good trade.
Maybe,
how do you cut that down? How do you reduce the risk? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in this case, what's particularly troubling is this could not occur without a cryptocurrency.
That's not true.
You think that a kid in Salt Lake City would be able to get $100 to a drug dealer in China previously? That has never happened in the history of...
But you don't need a drug dealer in China to buy dangerous synthetic drugs.
Certainly makes it a lot easier to be able to go online and just pick and click.
I don't think that teenagers have had a hard time buying synthetic drugs for 30 years.
Listen, I don't know. When I was a teenager in the 80s, the idea that you could go to a website and see thousands of types of drugs on a dark website and then order any number of those 1,000 and pay for it in a semi-anonymous way, that did not exist, actually. To find a drug dealer in Brooklyn in the 80s would have taken dozens and dozens of asking people, and maybe you'd find somebody or not, but it was nothing like being able to find hundreds of them in one central location.
So I think the way that, folks bought drugs where I grew up, which was not Brooklyn, was they went to the ATM and they took out cash and they bought them from a drug dealer.
Right.
Which is still the way almost everyone in the world buys drugs. Is they go to an ATM, they pull out cash, and they buy drugs.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter if you're choosing from thousands of drugs or you're choosing from one drug or two drugs. All that matters is whether or not the drugs are dangerous. And you can certainly make the argument, and this is not an argument that I would make, but you can make the argument that, at least with online markets, there's reputation systems or whatever. But I think fundamentally the thing here is we have a system in the United States where we've incentivized people to buy drugs in a dangerous way.
Right. So
which is a whole other conversation.
Well, I do think I'm with you. I think these things should be regulated, and if kids had to go to a store to buy drugs, you say no, kids can't buy them here. And I think what's happening with cannabis is a pretty good indicator of that.
Yeah, and
regulation is a pretty good idea.
The thing that I think people need to really focus on when these kind of things come up is that, by Bitcoin being involved, it's a news story. Because if the story is, they went and they withdrew some money and bought some bad drugs, but I had friends die in university of bad party drugs. This is far before Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I've had friends die since of bad party drugs. And really, it's the problem is that there's a lot of dangerous drugs out there today. And the way most people buy drugs is with cash from ATMs.
Yeah.
People do buy drugs with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But it's, really, really small. And at least with Bitcoin, law enforcement can track those transactions very easily at any point in the future. With cash transactions from an ATM, they don't have that option.
Right. So if they find one wallet, they could find 100 transactions, or if they find 10 wallets, they could find 10 transactions in each.
Really what law enforcement tries to do is go up the road to the marketplace or the dealer, right? And digital currencies make that easy. Cash from ATMs do not.
Is it hard for them to track down these Silk Roads and the Silk Roads too?
No.
This is pretty easy, right?
They're getting even faster at shutting these markets down now.
Huh.
They're getting real fast.
Where are these markets based now? I know that Silk Road was obviously based here in San Francisco, right? This was
I'm not an expert on the dark web and dark markets.
Yeah.
I've spent relatively little of my time on it.
Yeah.
There are some experts I can put you in touch with. I think they're usually just transnational.
Yeah.
The biggest dark market in history was based here in SF.
Which one?
Silk Road.
Silk Road was, yes. Yeah, that's why I think it's an interesting phenomenon. I think it was a super innovative concept here, and then now it's probably international.
I don't know, though, because I remember at the time everyone was like, Silk Road is located in Russia, and then, or, Thailand or something, and then it turned out Silk Road was in the Mission.
Yeah, it was that Black Rock.
Yeah.
It was somewhere between the temple and the Burning Man. There was a Silk Road server on the playa. Let's as we round third base here, talk about ICOs.
ICOs.
Super fascinating concept. Define what an ICO is in plain English, and then technically for the audience that doesn't know.
So an ICO is a short for an initial coin offering. People also call them ITOs, initial token offerings. And basically, you're just taking an asset and issuing some token that represents some part of that asset. Mm-hmm. So for example, you and I could start a company called Jason and Peter's Bagel Shop. and we could say that we're going to issue 100 tokens, and each token is 1% of Jason Peters' Bagel Shop. You can tell I'm hungry. And we're going to float that, and it's going to freely trade.
Right.
And what's exciting about it is that it makes raising capital a lot easier in terms of you can instantly offer something to the whole world, and it's going to have trivial infrastructure costs, trivial trading costs. And there's a lot of hype and mania about that now. And you've seen like writers like Balaji or Naval write articles about how it's 100 or 500x improvement on the status quo, and I think that's probably true. At the same time, I think at the moment it's pretty overheated.
Is there any ICO company that you think is particularly destined for greatness? In other words, the product itself is amazing. People are rabid fans of it. Which one comes to mind as the most viable concern?
Probably Ethereum.
Ethereum itself.
Yeah, Ethereum did a crowd sale, what they called a crowd sale, which is sort of a predecessor to an ICO. That's gone well. But the key thing with the Ethereum one is that, number one, the Ethereum crowd sale was done when the Ethereum platform was already pretty matured. You could look at it and see what they were doing. Number two, I think they raised like $20 million, which compared to some of the recent ICOs is pretty trivial. None of the founders or anybody were taking liquidity. I think that there's a lot of things that are happening that are not really great for the consumer in the ICO space today. And so let's talk about it from a consumer level, and then let's talk about it from a, does this make sense for companies? Because like you were saying, every company should ICO.
Well, I mean, also, to your point, like your best example of an ICO and a company that ICO'd was Ethereum, the platform itself. So that's sort of like, what's the best thing to come out of?
And this is like the fat protocols theory that a lot of people have talked about.
What is that?
Where it's like, you can invest in protocols now rather than just companies.
Right.
And I think that that's key. Like we need more protocols on the internet today.
So if you could have invested in HTTP or FTP or IRC, this could have been an interesting investment at some point.
For sure. But I think, one, it's not clear how you monetize protocols over time, other than they just have a token, other than a usage token or something.
Yeah.
That has to be sorted out. Like, how would you have monetized an HTTP token? I'm not sure. So there's some stuff that needs to be figured out there. I think the thing that's bad at the moment that's going on is that, people are raising a lot of money in these ICOs with very little governance, little to no governance. In fact, sometimes less than no governance. No real thought towards viability. Like I see a lot of ICOs where the project is really unnecessary or unviable, or where they've sort of like, what is it called when you like really try really hard to work yourself into a position? They've like artificially created the conditions for why they need to ICO. And then the other thing I'll tell people when they're like, oh, what do you think of the space? Well, I'm like, well, the 2 or 3 biggest companies in our space just raised capital, lots and lots of capital, and we didn't do it by ICOing. I mean, if we ICO'd, we could raise, I don't know, $500 million in an hour, but we didn't do that. And so you have to wonder why, right? And the reason I think, though we wouldn't do it right now, and who knows what the future will bring in a couple years, but the reason we wouldn't do it now is that, number one, there's no clarity from the regulator about whether these are securities or not. And in fact, the regulator has come out and said, we think some of these are securities and we're going to do enforcement at the web-based platforms, which are exchanges. People right now are giving tokens a massive liquidity preference. So they're saying they're worth a lot more because they're liquid, right? That's one of the drivers of utility. If they get shut down on the exchanges, that's going to drop out. The floor is going to drop out from under this, right? And I think that's likely to happen.
The regulators will just say, listen, you think you're selling API calls or tokens for a protocol, but the people buying it are speculating.
They'll go to the exchanges. They'll go to the what they call a web-based platform, because the SEC doesn't recognize these exchanges as actual exchanges. It was kind of like an underhanded dig at them.
Right.
And we don't run one of these, but they'll come to them and they'll say, hey, you need to delist these securities because we're going to start enforcement actions tomorrow.
Wow.
And they're going to say, not only are we going to fine you for whatever you do in the future, we're going to fine you for what you've already done. And when that happens, the SEC, these exchanges are going to delist them instantly, and the market is just going to drop out from under.
So
parties are fun till the music stops. And what I've learned is like the music does stop.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's likely to happen. The other thing that I'm, concerned about when the ICO, space is that a lot of the projects are just not that compelling, to be honest.
That was for me the big red flag, because I looked at the projects and I said, okay, these are a bunch of people who couldn't clear a market with venture capitalists, angel investors, AngelList, syndicates, Seed Invest, Republic, crowdfunding sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter. These are projects that literally the sophisticated investors and the unsophisticated investors would not back. So there is a signaling
or at that level.
problem.
Like there's some protocols where I've seen where it's like, yeah, I would think a $5 to $10 million round to explore this idea is a good idea.
Yeah.
$100 million or $200 million makes 0 sense.
Well, even 5 to 10 million doesn't make much sense to me, because we
the
already have
problem
we already have an infrastructure of incubators
Yeah.
where you get in based on your ideas, and it's pretty wide open.
Well,
and you get $100,000 to explore it. So why not go to YC?
I tell all entrepreneurs to avoid incubators, but that debate aside.
Not everybody's got your unique ability to raise $80 million out of the gate. But
we had nothing when we started. Okay. And it took us a really long time to raise it all in Northern England.
What's the downside to raising $125K from?
I think there's 2 or 3 incubators.
From Y Combinator, meeting hundreds of investors. And
I think
only
there's
giving up
2 or 3 incubators that are worthwhile.
Okay.
And I think everything outside those 2 or 3
then we're in agreement.
is predatory.
Okay, gotcha. I agree with that, actually. I think if you just look at the people running the incubators, it's sort of like the people running these ICO companies.
Yeah.
After the top 3 or 4.
You know what I saw the other day? An ICO for an incubator.
Yeah, that's.
And I was like, well, there we go.
Well, I'm doing a SPAC, a special acquisition corporation, special purpose acquisition corporation, and my SPAC is to buy up ICOs. So we're going to do a SPAC. It's $1 billion SPAC to buy up ICO companies. It's like doing a mortgage-backed device, like a bond offering for mortgage-backed securities that we don't know who actually owns the mortgages.
You should put a floating ratchet inside all of it.
Yeah.
That'd really get the financial engineering to a good spot.
Yeah, we'll just absolutely it'll be like a massive transaction fee. When we buy your company, we take 10%.
So let's come back to the ICOs. So the other thing that's happening a lot right now is that the ICO founders are taking personal liquidity in the sales. And I think if you're pre-product and taking personal liquidity, there's something wrong with you.
Well, that is a definite red flag. If you look at Secret, right, the anonymous app that came out. Well, but even still, they basically very early on were like, yeah, we'll take $2 million each and buy Ferraris, and like they're like, but they're pre-revenue, they have just modest traction for a fugazi idea.
Look, we're not even talking about that. I'm saying these guys haven't even got their product to market yet, and they're taking liquidity.
It's literally people are giving them $20 million on a business plan.
It's crazy. 200 million, by the way, not 20.
Million.
And some of the big
for
ICOs
Filecoin
has been 200 mil.
And Filecoin is basically
Bancor, Filecoin, Tezos, all 200 mil plus.
But Filecoin is to do a distributed storage network, correct?
Correct.
That is the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
Look, here's the
hold on a second. Is that the stupidest idea you've ever heard?
Not that I've ever heard. I've heard some bad ideas.
Okay.
But the real rub to all this is like, I mean, you've seen this. How hard is it to take a company from being worth 200 million to 600 million?
How long does that take?
How hard is it?
To 200 million to 600 million valuation or revenue?
Valuation.
Well, it would be 3x in valuation. So if you had a company at 200 million valuation, you would probably have 5 to 10 million in revenue.
No, but how hard is it? Like easy, simple?
It's always hard.
But my experience, it's really fucking hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
okay, so these guys raising 200 mil to get their investors a 10x return, to get them a venture return, need to go to 2 billion.
Huh.
Like that's tough. And I think it just sets up a bad set of expectations, not just for their investors, but also for the team and the founders and the project itself.
Right. What do they do with all that money? I saw Tezos. They're going to come on the program. They raised $232 million in their ICO. What is Tezos, and what do you think of that?
Tezos is a protocol.
Okay.
They did take personal liquidity.
They did?
They did.
Okay.
Pre-product.
How much? Do you know?
I don't know how much it ended up being. It was...
The founders took money off the table.
I believe, yeah. So, look, here's the other problem. The other problem is that once you raise this money, because it's like, I've seen there's a trend of companies that are trying to ICO, and I think some venture capitalists are excited about it because maybe it can get them some liquidity on some of these investments that have been sitting too long. The challenge there is like, say you're say you're Zenefits, and you go out and you do an ICO, right? And you say you raise $100 million in an ICO. You have to turn that, you're not actually raising dollars, you're raising Ether and Bitcoin. And you have to turn that Ether and Bitcoin into dollars because your law firm's not taking Ether and Bitcoin. The power company's not taking Ether and Bitcoin. You probably want your returns as an investor in dollars. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe I'll take Bitcoin going forward.
But you need to convert it to dollars.
God, if I take in Bitcoin going forward. Oof. But at some point, you're right. You do have to transfer it. So what are these?
Here's
What are
the
these?
problem.
What do these companies do? Do they just
No
sell it?
regulated exchange wants to take the proceeds of an ICO.
So they're basically sitting there on this huge coin that they can't move.
Well,
or Bitcoin.
so a regulated exchange isn't going to do it, which means maybe you do it via one of the like over-the-counter brokers in Asia, or you do it with one of the Asian exchanges. But then once they convert it to dollars, they have to transfer you the money back in dollars.
Right.
What do you think your bank would tell you if you started
taxes?
getting 10 million in transfers from the Pudong Offshore Financial Center?
They would tell you, be prepared for a visit.
They would say, where's this money coming from?
Yeah.
And you would say, it's coming from my crowd sale. And then if you think the exchanges were not excited about that, your bank is really going to be excited.
So these, for example, Filecoin raising all that money, they don't actually have access to it in all likelihood.
They have access to the digital currency, but there's only so far digital currency can take you.
Right. So there might be a way to pay your Amazon Web Services bill with your digital coin.
There is not.
There is not. So until people start accepting the coins, you're basically in this frozen currency. Does that explain?
But not just that. There's an even bigger impact, which I talked about Ethereum being a successful crowd sale.
Yeah.
The Ethereum Foundation nearly went bankrupt. And the reason is that the price of Bitcoin went from like 800 to 200. So not only are these ICOs on a lot of product risk of the protocol they're building themselves, they're also a massive leveraged bet on the price of digital currency. So if the price of digital currency goes up 5x and they're still holding it all, they almost become like little hedge funds where, the price of digital currency, it's like an Alibaba Yahoo situation.
Yeah.
But on the inverse, if the price rips down, suddenly they have 200 million in expectations, but only 30 million in capital.
Fascinating. Should ICOs be off of the Ethereum platform, or should people build their own currency? Like if I wanted to make my own J-coin.
I would use Ethereum. I'd use an ERC20 token on Ethereum.
ERC?
It's a standard.
A token on Ethereum. What if Ethereum goes busto and I have my token on Ethereum?
If
Ethereum devolves into chaos.
Ethereum goes bust is much lower than the likelihood that your own platform you've cooked up in your kitchen goes bust.
All right, here's my idea. I'm going to pitch you.
All right.
You're a rich guy now.
Where's your
paper.
deck? Where's your deck?
I have no deck. This is just like literally an elevator pitch. But I want to see if you'll invest in this. If you would invest in this, then it's a viable idea, and then I'll find a founding team and we'll do the co-investment. Here's my idea. Facebook and Twitter are collecting all of our information. They're making their money off of content providers, but they don't pay content providers, Facebook and Twitter, currently, right? So what if you created a Facebook clone? And when I say clone, I mean do what Facebook did to Snapchat to Facebook, which is just literally clone it. Like we'll start with the feed and friends and make it look the same. Because to Facebook's own point, it's just a format.
And when they complain,
we're just going
to point them back at Snap.
Perfectly right. So we're just going to make like just literally what they did to Snap, another version of it. But everybody who joins gets a J-coin, right? So for joining, you get a J-coin. And there's, let's say, 1 trillion J-coins in the world. No, for joining, the first million people who join get 1,000 J-coins.
It's a loyalty program.
Right. They all get J-coins as they sign up. The first 10,000 get 1,000. The next 100,000 get 500. You get the idea. Tapers down as you get into the network. Then we just keep 10% of J-coins for ourselves. That's our company.
Only 10%.
All right, 50%. 50% J-coins are not in circuit. Actually, here's how we do it. A third of them go to new signups. A third of them we keep. That's how we fund the company. And a third of them will be released at a later time based upon whoever produces the best content in the network. So if you're on the network, every hour you're on the network, you get 100th of a J-coin for just being online. Every time you like something, you give up a hundredth of a J coin. Every time you get a like, you get a hundredth of a J coin. You get the idea. J coins for liking, J coins for sharing. And then if you want to do marketing inside the network, you spend your J coins for a view of your content. That's it.
Do we have to call it J coin?
But no, I did that for just, I was thinking I have the domain name Kokua, Kokua.
That's not bad.
And Kokua means to help. And then my other idea was to take a portion of the coins and give them, so when people join, they can pick, I want my coins, if I earn any coins in the platform, to go to this nonprofit. So it just, when you join, it gives you a list of all nonprofits in the world, or the top 1,000. You can pick which one you want. So for somebody like me who joins, I'd just be like, give my stuff to Black Girls Who Code, or to a food bank, whatever I feel compelled to give it to. And so if I'm a super router in the network, I get a lot of followers. All of a sudden, every time I get a like, it gets recirculated to, and every year I clear out my coins. So I say, I want to clear out my coins every 60 days, every 100 days. So every 100 days I clear my coins out, or half of them to a nonprofit. What do you think of this idea? And then it would be distributed so that nobody, and all the content would be on a ledger as well. So the ledger for the content and everything would be distributed, so nobody owns the network as such. What do you think of this idea?
I wouldn't put the content on a ledger.
Okay.
Because that's just computationally too expensive.
All right.
But overall. I'd probably invest in it.
You would?
Yeah.
Put 250 in? 250?
I don't know about 250. I think people always think. I think people think startup founders have always made more money than they have.
I know. So you put a quick 25 dimes in. You put 25 dimes in, easy. I'll put in 25 dimes, and then we'll just get
and then we have to find somebody else.
No, that's easy for me. If I said I was doing this, I would easily be able to raise $1 million for it. But I don't think you need to raise any money. See, what I think I could do is I could write it up. Is there a way for me to write it up, sign up people's emails, and give them a coin now for giving me their email and validating it?
I would rather raise a $500,000, build the initial version of the platform, and then tell them to sign up.
So get the basic version going.
Yeah.
See, what I would like to do also is if you sign up with your...
I'm a product-first guy.
Yeah, I like it. And that's why you're successful.
My preference is always like, let's put the product out, and then let's see.
All right. Listen, what have we learned today? Blockchain.com is the best place for you to start a wallet right now. They're not trading in the United States, but that could change in as little as 60 days or not. Who knows? They've got some of the best investors in the world backing their platform, and you can easily, with one click, transfer Ethereum to Bitcoin and Bitcoin to Ethereum. That is a very unique new thing. That's going to drive a lot of people to open wallets. Are you the first people to do that?
It's definitely the lowest friction way to do it.
Got it. And it's super cheap to do it.
Yeah.
Just... Are you make any money when people do that, or are you doing that as a loss leader?
We make money when people do it.
A little bit.
Yep. Our model is always to make a little bit of money.
Just a little bit. That's 7 basis points.
It varies depending on the transaction type, but our model is always like...
What about this transaction specifically, like blockchain, Ethereum?
I have to go look at it.
10 bips?
I think it's like 25 or something.
25 bips? Yeah. Which is nothing compared to what people normally pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I think that's the interesting part about ICOs are probably all going to come crashing down. Be careful if you're going to speculate there, but... and if you're doing it for your startup, be very careful. It's very exciting, but be very careful. That's what I told people. People were like, hey, do your next angel fund or do your angel investing or syndicate through a coin. And I was like, I have like an actual fund with actual LPs. Like, it just seems to me like to be the first person up the hill and get all those regulatory arrows makes no sense.
I think so. My guess is the ICO market would be a lot like the digital currency market, which is it'll go up real fast, then it'll have an epic meltdown, and then on the second run is where you want to be.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to do, is I want to watch all these ICOs and just pick my...
And learn.
All right, Peter Smith, you can follow him. One more Peter on the Twitter. Are you active on the Twitter? See, I think a blockchain version or a Coinbase version of Twitter or Facebook would just be amazing.
It'd be cool.
All right, everybody visit blockchain.com, follow Blockchain, and thank you, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, putting everything. Thanks to our sponsors. And if you want to look at the archive, go to thisweekinstartups.com, and you'll find all the archive shows. You can follow us on Twitter at TWI Startups. You can follow me. I'm at Jason. And if you haven't read the book, Angel is the name of the book. You can buy it on Barnes & Nobles or iBooks or Audible or Amazon. And if you write a review, definitely ping me back, Jason at Calacanis, and send me your review so I can give you a fist bump and maybe even retweet it. I love those 5-star reviews. All right, we'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.